People who know, and only the people that were close to us last year know what we went through with that. I mean, it's hard. You don't have a runner to run. You don't have there's just, so all of these girls had to raise the level of play, with that. And then our older girls had to learn how to be, the best leaders and to create an environment where those younger girls felt like they could make mistakes and could learn and grow. And so I do think that has really helped set the tone for this season, because, our freshmen come on and, they're just welcomed right away with open arms. It's not like seniors are this and juniors are this. Everybody's a teammate. Everybody's an important part of the team.
Welcome back to another edition of Small Town Ball, Hurrdat Sports and NEB Preps production. Geez, I'm already getting nervous because we're talking softball this time. Our first time having some softball coaches on the show, and we're starting with Neely Moser of Central City Softball. Coach, thanks for your time on this Monday morning. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for asking me.
Well, Coach, let's just get started with where your season has begun so far this year. Pretty good start, I think, by most team standards. They feel really good. 10 games out of the gate, 8-2 or so. How do you feel your team has progressed through this beginning stretch of the season?
I'm really proud of our team. We've been working hard. This group of girls played together all summer long. And so we knew, once we got to August, we would hit the ground running and be able to, build on that and everything. So I'm really proud of them with their start. There's always going to be some things that we're continuing to work on. And I always tell the girls, every team you have, you kind of have a routine and all of the things that you do every year, but every team, every group of kids is different. And so it's been fun being able to start the season knowing a lot about what these kids need and what we can build on. And so that's been the exciting part.
And of course, for a team and a program like yours, there are always going to be some high-level expectations. I mean, getting into the state tournament and being one of those final teams to play, does that put a lot of pressure on your team starting this season, especially where last season maybe came across a bit as a disappointment?
Honestly, so last season, we were plagued with several injuries, and just we ended up with 10 girls on the team, which is really, really hard. And there wasn't a lot of things that we could do sub-wise, obviously, with that situation and everything. And last year, we chatted a lot about, there wasn't other girls to push each other in practice. So we really had to learn how to push ourselves. And so I was really proud of the girls, honestly, for how they did last year, ending up in a district final, with that situation. I knew we had talented kids, but we also had some kids that were starting that were, maybe not quite ready just because of our numbers and everything. And so I just think, we haven't focused too much on the end of the season. We're just taking it game by game. And then the other part of it is, we've really talked a lot about character and doing the right thing and trying to just, be good people and good teammates, and all of the winning and all of that fun stuff comes along with when you're taking care of those other things. So trying to really not focus on that kind of thing just kind of helps with the pressure part too, because if you're good people and you're trying to do the best that you can, we are going to make mistakes on that once in a while, and that does happen. But just trying to focus on those things instead of wins and losses, because they already know how to play softball. We know that it's the team that can play together the best and work together the best.
So going back to last season, you had 10 players left on your roster after injuries and just what was available. How do you even have a practice like that? It's just you and kind of your small bunch of group just hanging out. It kind of sounds like how when I go out on Wednesday nights in the summer and play softball myself. Like, it just sounds just so unique, and you build such a tight-knit unit that way, just going through that together.
Yeah, we did. And I will say, it was hard. And we say our comment on that is, people who know, and only the people that were close to us last year know what we went through with that. I mean, it's hard. You don't have a runner to run. You don't have there's just, so all of these girls had to raise the level of play, with that. And then our older girls had to learn how to be, the best leaders and to create an environment where those younger girls felt felt like they could make mistakes and could learn and grow. And so I do think that has really helped set the tone for this season, because, our freshmen come on and, they're just welcomed right away with open arms. It's not like seniors are this and juniors are this. Everybody's a teammate. Everybody's an important part of the team. There's room for everyone. Everyone has a job. And so, I really think that us going through that adversity last year, has helped us to see how great it is to have people that we can lean on. So.
Now, I know there are obviously a lot more variables once your season wraps up from 2024 that, there are going to be some players that are going to play other sports. There are going to be some other players that are going to, play some summer travel and do all that sort of stuff. But where you were last season to where you are now, did your team develop maybe more individual skills or become maybe more balanced players just because of your roster limitations from a year ago?
I do think that. I think it pushed, girls to, they could kind of see what their potential was. And again, like I said, we had one senior last year, and, that was another good thing too, is, she helped to create an environment where these girls felt safe in, making mistakes and things like that, because it's not going to be perfect all the time. And, I do think that the girls saw and they believed that they're like, well, if we can accomplish this with 10 or 11 people, what can you accomplish when, we're all able to split up the load and everything. So yeah, I do think that was huge. And it was very, very hard. I would say it was probably one of the hardest seasons I've ever coached. And we ended up, 500 or a little over that. And it just was because, you're always worried that someone was going to get hurt or, something was going to happen. And, we had to just, in the end, just trust and, work our tails off. And that's what they did. And so that's what you're seeing, some of that toughness, this year too, I think.
Coach, I'm curious about your perspective being in Central City and obviously being, a principal administrator in that area too. But Central City is such a unique community. You've got a lot of tight-knit groups there too. But being in Class C1, you kind of see the full gamut of other communities, other schools, and other programs you're going to compete against, and especially in softball. What's that unique perspective that Central City goes through when sometimes you're going to play a Kearney Catholic and sometimes you're going to be traveling to a larger city, but then other times you're traveling to even smaller communities than your own? I mean, that has to really wildly differentiate maybe even levels of preparation for the season and for how you go game to game.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the key to that, I do think, is, prepping the same way every time, because it's just important. You can't do it one way sometimes and another way another time. I do think, what has been big for us, which we, there aren't a lot of small communities that have their own club teams anymore. A lot of the girls are going, all different areas and things. And so I think one of the things that, we really pride ourselves on is we started Central City Stampede 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And, we have, that system in our town, and we're just far enough where it's hard to travel and not everybody can travel and it's expensive to travel, and we keep it, affordable and things like that. And so, I coach, the older group. I've coached the younger groups. My husband coaches too. Our assistant coaches are also coaching those youth teams too. And so, that consistency of us, being on the same page of what we're teaching, and, being consistent with that, and the kids are learning the same things. I mean, that's a huge thing for, being able to, be successful and be able to compete with some of the bigger programs.
And of course, development has to be huge for your program and just the town, the athletics in general there at Central City too, because I know you mentioned a little bit just about the premier program and all the different kind of club atmospheres that other communities are able to kind of rely on or lean on and individual training. But when it comes to Central City, for how long that you've been there leading the program, for the years that have come before and other athletics, it really is about we've got what we've got and we've got to make them as good as possible. How do you attack that challenge either in the summers, off seasons, or even on the in season when you're in the middle of, the heat of September and you still know, hey, we still got to develop our talent. We still have to be able to develop the kids we have because we're going to need them in a year's time or future.
Right. I think just knowing like we are a nice sized school, and, I guess I always believe that our kids can do anything. They just need people to believe in them. They need people to teach them and support them. And, all kids can learn, all kids can, be, I mean, you might have differing athletic abilities, but I just feel like, at the level that we're playing and everything, there's just so many roles for kids. And so helping kids find, that niche that they want to be in. Maybe not everybody's going to be a pitcher, but, there's going to be other positions you can play. Maybe it's a designated hitter. Maybe it's, maybe you're defense specialists and things like that. So I just think that that's been, important thing. And just believing that, I know our kids, I mean, we basically have just Central City kids playing in Stampede. And, just knowing that our kids are, amazing and they can do lots of things. And I will say, this is, I guess, my 11th year here, and doing softball and everything. I've learned a lot, from my own kids. I have 4 daughters myself. My oldest, played at Wayne State, was a pitcher. And, the next one, Gabby, played at USD. And we have, Jersey Schindler that just graduated a couple years ago. Just naming a few names, Taryn Wagner. We had, all of those girls that have come back and given back to the program too. So, Maddie, my daughter, gives pitching lessons, and she's given pitching lessons for years, to these girls. Gabby would do hitting, same with Jersey and Taryn, and there's others too. And so, it wasn't that way, 11 years ago. Those kids coming back and giving back, is huge, because we have talented people that can teach our kids. And so they're not just hearing it from me or Coach Burbach or Coach Wright or Marty, they're hearing it, from people who have played and who went to the next level. So.
Well, Coach, on that same note, I want to dive into Peyton Burbach's season so far. I mean, she sounds like someone who has definitely taken some notes in some of those 11 years of coaching from whoever's been able to help her out. So far this season, she's hitting .538 through 10 games, 8-2 in win-loss record. She's kind of been your primary one in the circle throughout the season so far. What stands out about her ability just to be kind of that dynamic two-way player for you when you really need her the most, especially through this early stretch?
Mm-hmm. She's just an amazing athlete, and her work ethic is second to none. And she's, like I said, she's gone after several of these other girls that have come through and stuff, and she got to see. She was a student manager. She was a little girl in the Central City Stampede program, and saw all of those things. And she's always wanted to be it to be her turn. And now it's her turn. These last 4 years it's been her turn, and she's been patient with that, and just a great learner. I mean, it's not perfect all the time, just like with any kids or any coaches and things like that, but just has that desire to want to do well, how to be a good teammate, learning all of those things, and then, wanting to play at the next level too. So she's just a great athlete, great person.
So, Coach, as we're talking now, the latest edition of the NEB Preps High School Coaches Softball Rankings haven't come out yet. But during the last one a few weeks ago, your team was rated 4th. That was when you were 4-0. You had moved up a couple of spots since then. Did drop 2 contests since that poll is released, but you still have to feel really good about where your team is trending. But my question for you is, you get some of these accolades, these top 10 ratings, probably not something that you're too keen on as a team. You're focused on the end goal, but when you do suffer some losses as a team that maybe people have a target on, how do you take those moments and move forward and learn from them and then be able to get better? Because some of these losses are to teams you may actually see again or are top rated teams themselves, like Beatrice.
Right, definitely. Yeah. Those 2 losses, Beatrice, that day, like they're awesome team. And, we just, I think came out and they knew that they were a good team. And, sometimes I think you have to learn that and have that feeling before you can learn from the situation and how to compete. And then later that day we had gotten the second loss. And I think, that's all part of it. And, what I told the girls is like, we're all very competitive, but we have to understand that that we have to learn something from every loss. What did we learn here? What are we going to take on to the next day and everything? And so honestly, I knew it was coming here pretty soon. And as a coach, you kind of want that to happen, to see kind of where you're at and kind of assess, next steps and things like that. So, it was a good learning experience, and, that the girls didn't like that feeling. And, we just talked about what we need to do to, to not have that feeling, and it's going to happen. So it's just learning from that.
And that just has to be one of those unique experiences about softball itself. It can happen in volleyball when you have triangulars or tournaments over a weekend, but you suffered 2 of your losses on this season in the same day. I mean, that has to have some different type of feeling than it would for a football player who, loses on a Friday night and they have the weekend to recover. They've got, the week of practice. The whiplash that your teams and all of Nebraska softball high school have to face is significant. How do you just recoup kind of the mental side when you do have a bad performance or a game that kind of gets away from you, and then you have to turn around so quickly and get over it and then move forward for the next one?
Yeah, I think you have to have a short memory, honestly. That's just what it's about. But that's like what it's about in participating in sports. It's like a next play mentality. Like we can be upset about it. We can analyze it. We can look at it, and then you got to move on, because, no one's waiting for you. And, you have to be able to move on. And if you can't move on, then, you're a different team than you thought you were. So I was really proud of them, coming back that next game and coming out the way that they did, because, it's hard to do that when you're a little down. And that tournament, the Kearney tournament, it's really competitive, a lot of bigger schools and everything. But that's why we're there, because we want to, play the best, to push us to be the best. So
on that same note, I'm glad you brought that up, because we talked a little bit about the differentiating factors in Class C1, that you could play up and play some Class B teams. You can play kind of to where your level is. But your schedule, I'm assuming that you obviously work with your activities director, try to coordinate how much you do. What is that balance like in trying to find the right tournaments, the right teams to play, especially fitting it in such a tight schedule? How do you find that balance between schools are going to be competitors, you want to see your team compete against them, also making sure, hey, we got to get some wins in here. We got to be able to get to the postseason if we can.
Yeah, it's hard. And you just never know how anything is going to, shake out and everything. You just try to put them in the best situation, to be competing and everything. And, our AD always asks us, questions about what we would like. And, we haven't changed it a ton in the last few years, but I mean, it's good to have a nice mix of schools that are your size. And then sometimes, some schools that are a little bit bigger to push you. And, because again, you're not going to get better if you're not being pushed and everything. Like this week, it'll be a challenge, because we're playing tonight, tomorrow, Thursday, and then 3 games on Saturday. And, like if you're counting those JV games, that's 9 games in 6 days. So, but that's what, everyone's used to with softball. And these girls are used to playing like that in the summer. It's nothing to play 3 games in one day. I mean, softball girls are tough. They're used to the heat. They're used to playing a lot of games in one day. So.
Well, on that same note, too, we talked a little bit about just how quick this season seems to go. I mean, I just got a calendar notification from our bosses here at Hurrdat Sports that we have already put on our calendar for the state softball championships. That's coming in like a month or so. When you have this level of opponents and that many games coming in a row, if you start to see some things slip from your team, or maybe some things you'd like to correct, how do you challenge them and make sure that improvements are still happening without the practice time? I mean, you have to turn around quickly, get your 8 hours of rest, get back into school, and then get back on the bus to go somewhere else to play. That has to be a little bit of a tug and pull, right? There's only so much you can correct in one moment.
Right. And that's where, like your preseason practices come in. You try to get everything in as well as you can. And, like I said before, these kids know how to play the game. They've played the game a ton, so you're hoping that in between those games, you're just making small fixes and things like that. But, you also have to build in some rest time, because that's really important too. And it's like weighing, an hour practice, or, having the day off. Sometimes that helps more than having an hour practice.
When you look at the schedule you have remaining, it's going to just ramp up completely as we start to hit this. I guess we're now at the middle point, exactly as we record today on the 15th of September, and you get ready for that first week of October. What are the keys for your team specifically that you'd like to either see improve, or maybe just some parts of the game that you'd like to see them take that next step forward?
I think just continuing to compete like that we've been, and just, nameless, faceless opponents, and just, playing our game and playing the same way every time, no matter who the opponent is. That's just all I ask. And I think if you can get your kids to do that, then you're going to end up with, a lot of good things.
I don't want to ask you too many preview, because you do have plenty of games that are coming up this week too, but you've got a couple of really big matchups, at least name-wise, when it comes up, especially through the remainder of this season too. But speaking of names, I kind of want to ask you just a fun question here. Do you ever get confused as to where you're going sometimes with the amount of consolidated schools, some of the Class C places? Because, we got all these acronyms now. We've got NEN, and there's Highway 91, and there's, GACC. We got all these different places, right? And I know, obviously, you've been there for over a decade, so you've probably seen these schools, these different combinations come and go. But it has to be a little bit confusing, right, at times? Because I was even looking at your schedule, and I said, I don't even know where they'd played this game. I don't even know where that school could be.
Yeah. Well, and telling the bus driver where to go, all of the things. We have lots of good people to help us and everything. But yeah, sometimes it is hard. So. Okay.
So I do want to ask you just about the changes with the state tournament as well. Obviously, there was a big push to try to get a bigger venue and a bigger space there for state softball. I really enjoyed all of the preliminary games that we had seen, even the state championship games that were in Hastings. But the move to Omaha this past year, were you able to see kind of the difference, and maybe for better or worse? What was your take on moving those state championship games specifically just to Omaha and out at UNL?
I just think the atmosphere there was great. It was second to none. And, our girls deserve the best. I like the Hastings atmosphere too. I think it's great, especially in those preliminary games. But for them to be able to play in a venue that was, of that caliber, and just people, able to accommodate people to see the game and everybody be comfortable, it was just huge for, the sport and everything. So, I love the small town, but I also love, them being able to, showcase their talents that way, just like every other, sport is able to too. So it was great.
Obviously, we love the small towns too, so nothing wrong with that. Coach, we'll let you go, because obviously you've got a lot of season left to go, and especially starting this week tonight. But I do want to leave you on this, Coach. When you get ready for any of these road trips, I try to ask all of our coaches that we have on, what's maybe your favorite road location to go to that obviously can't say home, you can't say state championship, but maybe a conference opponent, you really like their field, there's a great restaurant you always stop at. What's that one stop for Coach Moser as you get ready for the second half of the season?
So, well, I would say if you're asking me the entire season, I love going to Seward, because that's where my daughter lives and my grandson. And so we play ball and I get to see them. And so that's what I would say is my favorite.
That's a great, hey, listen, that's the best one I think I've heard so far. Everyone else, I talk to a lot of football coaches. They're always talking about whatever gas station hot dogs they can get or protein bars on the road. I think that's probably the most wholesome answer that we could probably get for the show.
Yeah, we have a really nice Mexican restaurant there. We frequent that. So
very good. All right, let's end it here with actually, I'll follow up to my last question. A follow up to a follow up, right? Success for the second half of your season. You're 8-2 right now. Anything can happen, obviously, but the way that your team is trending is on a very positive note, and you're looking like one of the contenders that could end up at Connie Clausen when we get to that stretch in October. What does success look like for you, and how do you determine that for your team as you head into the second half?
I just think going game by game and, keeping the girls focused on, taking care of each other, being good teammates, just playing the game that they love. The season goes so fast. This group of seniors that we have, we've had them since they were just tiny tiny little girls and everything. And just, I just don't ever want them to forget the reason why they play. And, those moments when, they got their first ball glove and all of those things. And so, I really, and maybe it's my old age of, doing this for a while, but, all of the wins, all of that stuff is great, and the competition and everything. But the most important thing are the people that you're spending the time with. And, I will say this group is just, they get along so well, and we just enjoy being together. And, I feel like that's the most important thing. And, if you've got that and you're playing good softball, then gosh, you can't do any better than that.
Coach, appreciate your time here today. Hopefully we get to see you again down the road as well. And also, congratulations, very first softball coach appearance here on Small Town Ball. It's a new show, but it's still, it's history in the making. You put that on LinkedIn or on your resume, wherever you want it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me.
Absolutely. That was head coach for Central City Softball, Neely Moser, joining us today on Small Town Ball. For more, check out Hurrdat Sports and NEB Preps, and of course, HurrdatSports.com if you're looking for those NEB Preps high school coaches top 10 rankings for all athletics across the fall, winter, spring, you name it, we've got it. Thanks again to Coach Moser, and we'll see you again next time.